This is 2023 in review. 2023 was a huge year for the channel, for Rise of Kingdoms. So many things happened in this year. So I thought it's a special thing to commemorate the first year of having this channel from January 1st to December 31st. We would talk about just what happened in 2023. So we're going to be talking about what happened in Rise of Kingdoms, what videos I personally had the most fun making and I thought people liked the most, what achievements the channel reached, and anything else that really comes to commemorate this amazing year that we've had. Without further ado, let's get started. So before we kick off in earnest, I also want to say that any of the videos I talk about today I'll include in a playlist that'll be at the end of this video as well as in the description. So if you're looking for a specific video I talk about, you can look there and find it. January was a huge month for Rise of Kingdoms. And not just because there was a whole new year of content to go, but they hit the ground running with the biggest update of the year, if not the biggest update in Rise of Kingdoms since I've been playing, and that was the addition of armaments and formations. In the past, even with the equipment release when I first started playing, you had very little in terms of variety choice. Sure, you had 2 or 3 different pieces of legendary equipment, even when you get to the Siege and Conquest level. But at the end of the day, there was a definitive right and a definitive wrong choice, even for field players. Same goes for talents. There was correct and not correct. And really the difference was night and day in 99% of cases. So really what came different with armaments and formations is just the sheer augmentation you can have with the overall system. If you wanted to lean into your meta damage, you could go wedge formation, sure. And you could just further lean into your optimization of whatever archetype of troop you have. But also, if you just wanted to give yourself some more damage resistance because you tend to get focused, you have an option to do that. If you wanted more mobility because your march is too slow, you can do that. If you want to make your buffs a little stronger, absolutely you can do that. So while rallies and garrisons are still pretty much penned in by the whole meta and not meta, with field you have so much more because the 5% for a field march is the difference between a couple hundred to maybe 1,000 severely wounded versus matching your playstyle and further leaning into it. A perfect example is Joan Prime. Sure, the main use of Joan Prime is with wedge formation, but you can pair her with William and use Echelon. You can use her with any commander in triple line to get a farm hunting march. Sure, if you wanted to reduce the damage taken because she gets focused, you could absolutely use Hollow Square. And that's just the amount of variety you have in field choices where almost all the formations have some sort of use to you, even if it's not the optimal meta use. So it gave so much more agency to individual players, and it's really changed the way you can play in the field and giving you the ability to make your own play style. If you want to go full damage and go high risk, high reward, that's great. If you want to go for full mobility, even on a slower march, just so that you feel like you're not going to get held down by the enemy, that's great. Overall, it's whatever you decide. My favorite video in this, of course, is the Echelon formation being underrated video of this month. And really, it was talking about why Echelon formation is super underappreciated. And I still think it is now, because the 1.2 times doesn't sound like a lot. But when you actually apply it to certain stats like Joan of Arc, the epic one, if you're using her as a buffer and as a secondary commander, that is huge. You're essentially giving 5% attack, defense, and health on top of these stats you're giving, depending on what the troop's unit type is. Or if you're using William, the 20% defense becomes a 24% defense boost, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you're talking about a third of a legendary equipment piece in defense stat. So that's not anything to turn your nose up to. And the biggest one for me is like Trajan, who has a 25% skill damage boost, and now becomes a 30% skill damage boost, which doesn't sound like much, but when you look at wedge formation, you're giving 5 of your allies a wedge formation bonus on top of whatever they have for their formation, at the cost of you essentially giving up your own. So it's really super underrated, and I still think it is now just because of how versatile it is. But that's really one of my favorite videos I've ever made, and definitely my favorite for January. Some other videos I made in January are some KvK related videos. My two favorite of those were the Kahar chaining and the Barbarians versus Forts. I like the Kahar chaining video because it's really super applicable to everybody, whether you are a free-to-play, whether you're full pay-to-win, or you're anywhere in between. Everybody could use a little bit extra AP efficiency. And if you have any AoE commander, you could really use this to your advantage. Some are harder than others to make this work with, but any one of them can work. The Barbarians vs. Fort video I really enjoyed because it really goes into the analytics of which one is more crystal efficient, which one's more AP efficient for your honor, which one's better for the kingdom. And overall, that really gave a lot of information for people to be able to have their own agency and decide what's best for themselves at that moment and what's best for the kingdom. So if you needed more crystals or you needed crystals quickly, you knew which one to do. Versus if you were using a farm to just kind of boost the kingdom honor, you knew what to do. There were some channel milestones we also reached in January. The two biggest ones that we reached were 250 subscribers and 50,000 channel views. Both of those were really insane to me because overall I didn't really expect the channel to reach any level of success, given that it's more about garrisons and more about little tips, but the ability to just impact all these people was amazing to me because you're talking about at 250 players, 250 subscribers, you're talking about an alliance and a half worth of players that are watching videos and learning about garrisons, learning about supports, learning about whatever they happen to want to be learning about on my channel. And to be able to have that level of outreach and impact, even if it's on newer players, even if it's on people within my kingdom, was really kind of humbling, and it's kind of cool to see happen. And of course, 50,000 views is a staggering number. Even if it's just the shorts videos, you're talking about 50,000 minutes, which is almost 1,000 hours of people watching my content. So it was really cool to see, and both were really exciting milestones to hit in January. So with the sheer amount of content released in January, obviously February is going to be a little more quiet. And the news in Rise of Kingdoms really reflect that. Really the most major information we got in February was some more details on ranged combat and some possible adjustments to how they're going to do it because there's so much testing going on with it. And of course the early leaks of Heraclius, as well as Margaret and Babber just being relatively new information. And it's funny because looking back at it, it seems so clear in hindsight that Heraclius was going to be impactful, but it's one of those things that I was so happy to be wrong because my gut instinct didn't really stick out to me that he was going to be such a huge deal. And I am never happier to be wrong because he is pretty much the center staple of the Garrison meta and one of my most used commanders, and I imagine he'll be so for some time now because he's essentially a much stronger version of YSS. And it really shows the transition of Rise of Kingdoms from damage dealt to damage reduced. Because that's really the big difference between Heraclius and YSS, is the normal attack damage YSS has, or does not have rather, and the normal attack damage reduction that Heraclius does have. It is the major difference, and it's night and day how much better Heraclius is now. And it's crazy just how effective that is. And really it's showing more and more with the garrison commanders and the rally commanders just how much damage reduction is more important than damage dealt. And it even shows now with Gorgo and Constantine and how certain commanders do so much better with damage reduction over just the damage increase. And I imagine that's where the Garrison meta is going to continue to go for quite some time. And I think we'll see more and more shield commanders because of that as well, both with Gorgo and Heraclius both having shields, and just overall the impact that Hollow Square is going to have in the near future with their specialty inscriptions. But overall, it was a really quiet time of the month, but we did have quite a few videos more about the formations because there's so much still to figure out. And my favorite videos were pretty much all formations based. The two I'm going to mention are comparing armaments quickly. I liked being able to do that and just sharing my experience on it and how to quickly compare two armaments, because this was before we even had the comparison feature, so you had to just click on one and click on the other. And I found that there's some quick little ways to more or less understand which one's going to be more impactful without having to sit down and delve with this is minus 0.2% attack and plus 0.1% health. Oh, that's better. And just kind of getting it down to the nitty gritty and getting it where you don't have to spend 45 minutes looking through a wall of armaments to decide which one's best. The other video about formations I really liked, of course, was commanders that best fit echelon formation. As I mentioned earlier, I thought echelon formation was very underrated, and my favorite echelon formation commanders video was a way for me to really show just how impactful they can be, because there's so many commanders that can really use echelon formation to such a great degree for your own kingdom and your own alliances. Lastly, the video I really enjoyed most in February was releasing the Jan commander review. It came with a lot of anticipation because I've been excited for Jan for some time, and while I didn't get to talk about Heraclius at that point, Jan was already such a huge impact. Even after we had Tariq out in the meta, Jan was still just that solid bulwark of not being able to be unseated from the Garrison meta. And he still is now, even when you look at Gorgo. As good as Gorgo is, Jan is still basically on a similar level. So instead of it being like rank 1 and rank 2, it's like rank 1A and rank 1B. And I think that really is a testament to how good Jan is. And one of the commanders I think is one of my best investments, and really is still one of my favorite garrisons right next to Heraclius. While we didn't really hit any major channel milestones, it was great to see some growth, and we were, by the end of the month, really creeping up on that 300 subscriber mark. So it was really cool to see how quickly the channel was developing as well. Now that we're on to March, of course the major news in March was the release of Heraclius and the release of Margaret and Babur. All three of them released about the same time, and they were pretty significantly delayed because they were talking about early February when they were coming, and they didn't really get here until later in that month. So although they were a little late, it was exciting to have them in the game, and of course the impact Heraclius has had on the game is undeniable, and I don't imagine he's going anywhere anytime soon. He is still my go-to as one of the safest investments now, and the commander that I'm sure I will never live down as being a little bit unsure of is now one of the most used commanders in my arsenal. So, of course, it is something to mention. My favorite videos were pretty much talent-based. This month was very heavily on the talents, because with all the discussion on armaments, I kind of wanted to cover some of the other things that you could do to make your commander unique. And talents is really the only other way to do that. So my three favorite videos from this month were just the best overall commander talents for single uses. Just in terms of individual 1-point investment gives you the most value. And really, it was cool to talk about some of these talents are borderline broken on certain commanders. And it really shows most of all in meta commanders. So like all infantry defenses with hold the line are really difficult to unseat, just because the 20% damage reduction is huge. And that's why part of why Heraclius is as big of a deal as he is, because of the 30% normal attack damage reduction. And now you've got a commander that can trigger on a talent the ability to reduce all damage by 20%. I think it's very underappreciated, and I will always sing the praises of that talent if you can keep your defenses all infantry. But being able to talk about those talents and some of those talents that are borderline game breaking was honestly a great way for me to help teach others and show others how impactful talent choice can be. Some other videos I liked for the talents is the best Garrison talents specifically, and I kind of talked about that just a little bit ago, but also just the weird anomaly that is the Garrison talent tree, because even the best Garrison talent trees typically don't invest very heavily in the Garrison tree, and typically don't go any further than this first little line of talents. And it really shows how versatile and varied the talent trees are, which isn't always a great thing, but it is something that shows just how much value you can get from the red trees and the blue trees, because the yellow trees just tend to be a lot weaker. And being able to talk about that and just help guide people in the right direction of how to build talents. So not only today, but the next commander that comes out, how you can really envision what talents are going to work best with them for each individual tree. So it was fun to be able to do that. Of course, we did also cross the 300 subscriber mark during March, which was awesome. It was cool to be able to do another giveaway for people. And it was overall just super, super exciting to be able to reach that goal and just reaching a growth that I still am a little crazy surprised that we've reached that point already. And it was just really awesome to see. Next, we got to April. And the big thing that was going on in April was the initial leaks of Dido and Liang. But we also had some other small changes. We had some changes to migration, where you could leave KvKs for reduced passports, and they were talking about first implementing that, and that's when the first system updates came through with it. We also had updates to some relics, with Saladin and Khan getting their own relics, which were the first real major expansion to relics in a while. And we also got the update to leadership equipment, where we had equipment that was essentially 70% stat of the specialty, like infantry, archers, cavalry, but were for all troops. And I thought that was really something that a lot of people passed up on at an original glance. It was actually super impactful. We actually had a KvK most recently where we had somebody using Hera and YSS with the leadership equipment. And when you have a mixed garrison like that, you just have so much unit flexibility because all units are getting the same buff, so you don't have to worry about having primary infantry if you're using infantry gear. It's all the same. That being said, the cost of it really puts it out of the range of even mid spenders. You have to be a higher end spender to be able to make that work, because between the investment to get the blueprints and the investment of materials to make it, and then the investment to eventually get it iconic and to get it with the specialty for leadership, it's just so much extra that you have to do that it's really not viable for most players. So it's really on the high end, but I think it's something that's super exciting for those who do have a player who can manage it or who want to just build leadership garrisons to help fill gaps. It can really win you some sneaky trades. And it was a great source of frustration for the enemy camp for quite a while, especially in the early stages before the fighting really got out of hand. It was something that was really solid and hard to unseat. For videos this month, my favorite were just really a reiteration. One of my favorite videos I first ever made in the first couple months I started making videos was the best commanders for free to play. And I got to revisit that with Season of Conquest only commanders. And that was one of my favorite videos because I got to talk about some of the commanders that just are really, really relics, but still unstoppable. I mean, you're talking about a commander like Devsky, who's been around for 2-3 years, who is still a must-have for all players. And it was cool to be able to talk about that and give players options to look forward to and be like, okay, when I hit Season of Conquest, this is what I can do. Some other ones, I got to talk about supports. All 3 of my support videos I really, really enjoyed making. So I got to talk about what a support is, what type of supports there are, and what my favorite pairings are for each support type. And being able to talk about supports was something great for me because that's my favorite field type. I like helping allies. That's part of why I play garrisons, is to be able to help my team. So being able to help my team in the field by helping them do better is great. Even if I can't just lead even helping lead the field, but to physically make their trades better is so cool that it's an option in this game at all. So I love being able to do that. And the last video I made that I really love is, of course, my Joan Prime Commander review, which is a full-length review that I just really, really enjoy talking about, because she is still hands down my favorite field commander in the game. I mean, you could see her on the screen now, not only in the center of the screen, but in my video frame. She is one of the most impactful commanders for me, and it is one of the few field commanders I pretty much went to max on day one. So it really was cool to be able to talk about her and really show people why she's so impactful. And it actually ended up getting a couple people to invest in her in my kingdom. So that was kind of cool to be able to have that direct impact even within my own kingdom. So May was another busy month in Rise of Kingdoms. We had a lot of things happen. The biggest thing is that Dido and Liang officially released. So that was a huge thing for cavalry players, and it was just a huge overall detail for the Garrison meta, for the rally meta, because both of them had implications within their own respective fields, as well as the fact of Liang being super viable in the field on top of being a rally leader. So all that added, we also had some changes to Mightiest Governor and Wheel for the early stages of the game, which I thought was a really cool thing to do. Switching, for example, they switched Khan and Saladin so that Saladin would be more available to people who would actually need him versus people who would need to be able to get a bunch of heads at once for Khan to make him useful in the early stages of the game. So that for them to switch that around made it really great, and honestly it was something that both free-to-play and pay-to-win players really got to benefit from. So overall, it was really nice. Of course, you had the Autarchs, which is not met without any controversy because it was very, very controversial. And overall, the infantry KvK skin, there's so much that happened in just little pieces. And part of me wonders if part of that was the delay on Dido's release and Liang's release, because we got leaks weeks upon weeks before the commanders came out. But overall, it was just great to be able to have these two new commanders and a bunch of small changes instead of the massive updates from earlier in the month or earlier in the year. The channel reached 100,000 views in May, which was cool. So in 4 months, we racked up 50,000 channel views from January to May. And it was late in January versus early in May. So it was a very short gap, which was really cool and really shows how much support and how much I'm grateful for that, because so many players were supporting, so many viewers were supporting by watching, and it was cool to see the ability to have this impact on other people and show them what I'm seeing. The videos I enjoyed most out of all these, which I'll skip over the commander leaks because they were more about the commanders, and we already covered that in the news, but some of my favorite videos was talking about the new Prime versions I'd like to see. It was cool to be able to conceptualize, because we were getting all these Joan Prime, Scipio Prime, Boudica Prime. Just really saying, like, I would love to see this as the next Prime version, because there's so many good commanders, like Herman, who's currently getting a Prime version, and actually at the time of this video is being released, and Belisarius, who have such great stories that they deserve to have a legendary commander where they are talked about more often, even if it's just even if it gets one more person interested in the history of that character and that person. I think it's really cool. The other videos I liked was talking about best equipment by rarity, which I thought was a great way for people to know, if I only have enough materials for a blue piece of equipment, what can I get the most value from? And it's whether you are building an extra set as a T5 player and you're just building another field set, or you are a new player who's just looking to pick up one extra piece of equipment to help even their trade up or make themselves a little bit better. I thought that there was kind of a nice little way to give that information and to be able to share what I thought were some of the better equipment pieces that may get overlooked just because of the rarity they're at. And of course, last, I love talking about more than gems, and I got to make a video on the alternative spending options for more than gems, and that was really cool to be able to do, because I could then share, like, buying arrows, buying troop expansions, or buying defense buffs no matter what level you're at, there's something you can buy outside of just spending money on speed ups. And don't get me wrong, speed ups are super useful. But if you were looking to get something else because you have a stockpile, or you were looking to try to get further ahead if you're building up, there's so many different options. And being able to talk about that is honestly pretty cool, and being able to help get a little bit more efficiency out of your playstyle, and especially applicable to free-to-plays in that regard. And now we're on to June. This was the halfway point of the year, so halfway through the year we got to talk about some other stuff, and it was nice. The big news that came out in June was towards the end they announced the Greece civilization was coming to Rise of Kingdoms. Of course, it's great because we got a new infantry civilization, and we just got more commanders and more ways to play the game. So it was fun, and honestly, the civilization's solid. If it's not number one, it's second or third, depending on what your overall philosophy is on it. So the ability to basically have an immediate impact, even for veteran players, was great while opening another playstyle. The other news was Siege of Orleans, which I want to mention because it is my all-time favorite KvK format, just because the amount of augmentation you get because you can select whatever your own support skills without having to worry about the bastions picking what you need. So if you want to put Theodora's 4th bastion skill on any commander, you could do that, and that's your prerogative. So it gave you a lot more flexibility. And I thought that's great for higher end players who have a lot more commanders unlocked, but it's also great for free-to-play players who are just wanting a specific build or want to make a specific optimized setup. Even if you're only having a level 3 or level 4 skill because you're building up a commander, the ability to have the freedom to choose what your support skills are, I think it's huge for defenses, it's huge for rallies, and it's huge for the field. So overall, it worked out great for everyone, and it was really exciting. The videos I made in June that I really enjoyed, that I'm going to include in this, is the biggest things that cause garrisons to fail, because I got to talk about what I've observed is the things that garrisons tend to be weakened most by, and be able to help educate other players on things that maybe nobody passes a glance at in a regular defense. They might not even notice it, and they might just, oh, well, the defense fell. Well, why? And answering that why question is the way that we improve. So being able to share those insights, and even if just be able to help a couple players even to help improve their trades, was exciting, and it's something that is great because I think garrisons are healthy for the game. So being able to help garrisons, I think, is great for the game. The other video is bridge commander pairings, which I thought was a great way for players who are transitioning from non-Season of Conquest to Season of Conquest. If you had some commanders built, here are some pairings you can use while you're building up your Season of Conquest. So there's not this lull between non-Season of Conquest and Season of Conquest where you're essentially just waiting for commanders. These you can jump into the fray right away, and you're still going to be impactful. Even if it's not as impactful as the meta pairing, it's still something where you can make a difference for your team and make a difference for your kingdom. And the last video I really liked was, of course, clearing a full hospital without using any speed ups, which is essentially a cost, how long it's going to take you to do that without any speed ups, using as many tricks as possible, because the more speed ups you can save by not using them for healing, the better. So if you can accurately set yourself up to have your hospital cleared before the next major fight without using any speed ups, if you can get every member of your alliance to do that, or even half, that is weeks, if not months, of speed ups you are saving. And it could really make the difference between success and failure, because then in the heat of the battle, you're going to have those speed ups available. Whereas if the other team is recklessly using their speed ups early, they might run out. So it can make a huge difference between success and failure if you can use it to your advantage. So I liked being able to share those insights as well. But with that, I think we're going to stop this 2023 in review for part 1, because we're already creeping up on half an hour. And I'm sure you guys don't want to hear me rant for an hour all at once in one sitting. So I will post part 2 on the other side of New Year's. And let me know in the comments what your favorite video of 2023 was, or what you're looking forward to, or what you thought went well or poorly in Rise of Kingdoms in 2023. As always, if you're not subscribed, subscribing is a great way to show some support and to help the channel grow. And leaving a like and comment about what you enjoyed helps give me valuable feedback on what videos you guys are enjoying and what videos you guys would like to see some improvement on. But as always, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield in 2024.